Sava, all, sannyasi, the Mayavadi sannyasis, Mahaprabhu ke, Caitanya Mahaprabhu, Laya, taking him, Bhiksha, Karilena, took prasadam or took lunch, Sabe, all together, Madhye, in the middle, Basaya, seating him. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. After this, all the sannyasis took the Lord into their midst, and thus they all took their meal together. Please repeat. After this, all the sannyasis took the Lord into their midst, and thus they all took their meal together. Purport. Previously, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had neither mixed nor talked with the Mayavadi sannyasis, but now he took lunch with them. It is to be concluded that when Lord Chaitanya induced them to chant Hare Krishna and excused them for their offences, they were purified, and therefore there was no objection to taking lunch or Bhagavat Prasadam with them. Although Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu knew that the food had not been offered to the deity. Mayavadi sannyasis do not worship the deity, or if they do so, they generally worship the deity of Lord Shiva or the Panchopasana, Lord Vishnu, Lord Shiva, Durga Devi, Ganesh and Surya. Here we do not find any mention of the demigods or Vishnu. And yet Chaitanya Mahaprabhu accepted food in the midst of the sannyasis on the basis that they had chanted the Hare Krishna Mahamantra and that he had excused their offences. Om Ajnana Timirandasya Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshu Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine. Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvashesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine. So Lord Chaitanya, he wouldn't accept prasadam. He wouldn't eat with people who didn't have a proper consciousness, and he accepted prasadam. In this case, Srila Prabhupada makes the point that he accepted to eat with the Mayavadi sannyasis on the basis of their consciousness, on the basis of what they'd done, independent of whether there was an offering or not. So we know Krishna is called Bhava Grahi Janardhan. He is the one who accepts the mood of devotion of the worshipper. So the bhakti yoga process, it is it is about the state of the consciousness. One time, Srila Prabhupada, one devotee of disciple Srila Prabhupada, Sahotra Swami, he recalled in a video that he was reading some books about Vedic technology, about flying machines and different things. And he went to Srila Prabhupada and he said, what is the real Vedic technology? What was it actually? What was the technology they had? And you can see him hear him relate this on the following Srila Prabhupada video series, where he said that hardly the words had left his mouth when Srila Prabhupada said, Vedic technology means Sri Guru Parampara. So the technology of the essence of the Vedas, of the Bhakti Yoga process, is Sri Guru Parampara. It is the consciousness of service, the consciousness of trying to do the activity for the pleasure of the Supreme Lord. That is an internal process. So the other processes of yoga, karma yoga, jnana yoga, they more so deal with the external. So in karma yoga, one's doing one's activities, there's different rules and regulations for how you're dealing with the material world to get gradual elevation. In jnana yoga, there's a process of how to withdraw from the material world. But these are both, they have an element of, you might say, mechanical process. It's a mechanical type of process. So if we give an example, like if we have an appliance that we buy an appliance from the store, it comes with a manual. And it says if you push this button, this is going to happen. If you push that button, that'll happen. Don't run it for more than so many minutes, or this might happen. So it's a very mechanical process. Do this, get that result. So that's like the process of karma. And then jnana, you might compare it to trying to escape from a maze, right? Jnana is all about liberation, getting free from the maze or the prison house of the material world. And that, if you're getting free from a maze, there's nothing personal about it. It's just, you go this way, it's a dead end. You go that way, it gets you more towards the exit. So these processes of yoga are more or less mechanical. And we can see that the vast majority of religious processes that are there in the world that we can analyze today are predominantly based on these two principles. A mechanical process of doing certain activities. It might be, a subtle activity like giving in charity, where you get good things back. You elevate yourself by, Vedic sacrifices and go to the heavenly planets. All of these different things. Or it might be more like a sort of Buddhistic kind of a process where you're withdrawing the senses, you're withdrawing from the material world. Almost all of the processes of religion are mainly these two things, and they're basically mechanical. This aspect is mechanical, although there are elements of bhakti in other traditions. We're not fanatical saying this is the only thing. There are elements of bhakti, especially in those personal religions, Christianity and Islam, where there is definitely an element of devotion to God, a personal aspect. But if you analyze it, because there's no description of who is that person, what that person likes, who that person actually is, then it's very limited. And so mostly it's a mechanical process of karma and jnana. But the process of bhakti yoga is actually a personal process. And where karma might be like the manual of an appliance, where jnana might be the map to get out of a maze, in that sense, bhakti can be compared to a relationship with a friend. So it's not a mechanical process, and we've all had the experience that we meet some people and they become friends. There's just a connection that we have with those people, and there's a personal connection. And then at times that might change, or with another person we may not feel that. And sometimes there's nothing you can put your finger on it. It's not like somebody pressed the wrong button or this or that. It's personal. It's a personal relationship with a friend, and actually, if you treat a friend like that, like a machine, like if I do this, I get that result, then we know it's not very pleasing. And sometimes people say, you know, I work for somebody, you know, or I'm under some authority, and they just treat me like a machine. They just treat me like a number or something like that. And we know people, you know, all around the world, people talk about this concept, and they don't appreciate it. They just treat you like a machine. That, you know, do that. There's no person. There's no relationship. So people feel it when there's a relationship there. So bhakti yoga, it is more like that. It's a relationship. But it's a relationship with the Supreme Lord. And so when it comes to the Lord, He, you know, obviously it's a relationship. He appreciates that actual relationship, that actual feeling towards Him. So, you know, in this sense, you know, in the other yogas, the rituals are very important. We can read in the Bhagavatam that somebody was doing a ritual to attain, this may be karma yoga, but even just karma in the sense of the Vedic sense of, you know, elevation to heavenly planets. So in either sense, but in the Bhagavatam there's an explanation where someone was doing a process of karma. They were doing the rituals, and they got one tiny piece of it wrong, and they got the whole different result. You know, instead of somebody that would kill Indra, it was somebody that Indra was going to kill. So like that, the other processes are the rituals are very important, because that's really the essence of the process. If you want to turn on the blender, that ritual of pushing that button is essential. It doesn't matter how you feel. It doesn't matter whether you're feeling good towards it or not, really. If you do that, you get that result. So in bhakti, the rituals are important as far as they relate to our dealing with the material world, right? And therefore Prabhupada said the Pancharatrika is very important, to be clean, to be precise, to be in the mode of goodness, so the devotees don't become affected by the material world. But that's really the rituals are not there in and of themselves as they are in other processes. And this is really exemplified in this pastime, where the Mayavadi sannyasis were, you know, they didn't perform the ritual, they didn't offer the food, there was no deity, as Prabhupada's pointing out. But because their consciousness had changed, they had asked the Lord for forgiveness for their, you know, offensive atheistic mentality. They'd asked Him for forgiveness. They chanted Hare Krishna with the Lord, and the Lord accepted prasadam with them. He accepted it as prasadam. So the question comes up in this whole lila is that why didn't Lord Chaitanya accept prasadam with the Mayavadis at first? Right? He was there for I think this time he was there for about 10 days, staying with Tapana Mishra, Chandrasekharacharya. But he was there several times, coming on his way to Vrindavan. Why did he not? And one reason is that, you know, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur explains that there are 6 loving exchanges that happen. And these happen in bhakti yoga, but they happen in just general everyday life. As Srila Prabhupada explains in the purport to that verse. This is Rupa Goswami, right? 6 loving exchanges, my mistake. So the 6 loving exchanges are to offer some gift to somebody, to accept a gift from someone, to reveal your mind, to actually tell the person, you know, there's something that's, I don't understand, trouble me how, you know, to actually reveal what you're thinking, to confidentially inquire and talk with somebody, and then to also share food, you know, to offer some food, to accept some food. In the purport, Prabhupada says, even these exchanges go on even in business meetings. You know, the businessmen will come together and they'll confidentially talk about the business matters. They'll maybe bring some gift and they'll share lunch together. So these 6 loving exchanges are there. This, just as a total aside, this Christmas we have a big family, and the children know about Christmas from so many people. So we have the Christmas tree and we got some gifts for the children. And in previous years I thought, what is this Christmas? Is this total mundane thing? And then I thought, hang on a sec, this is giving gifts. And I know once a year we go to my extended family, my mum, my dad and my sister and her husband, all her kids and everything, we all go and everybody gives gifts to each other. And I suddenly thought of this verse, giving gifts is actually one of the Vaishnava exchanges. And I thought, that's why people actually get a taste from it. So wherever you contact devotional service, so this is obviously very indirect, and I'm not suggesting that giving or accepting a gift on Christmas is the same as coming to the temple or chanting Hare Krishna or anything. I'm not suggesting that. But at the same time, we can see that there's a taste in these interactions. They work for anybody. It's a loving exchange to give a gift, to accept a gift. So anyway, in this way, Rupa Goswami has explained that accepting prasad, taking prasad from someone or giving prasad is actually one of the 6 loving exchanges. It's actually a type of association. It's actually a very close kind of association. Bhaktivinoda Thakur does talk about actually that the types of association, and he says that if you're just going to the market and you catch the boat, like in Mayapur, you have to go from the Hulagat across to across to Navadvip to the market, and you give the 50 paise, and the guy says, okay, he gives you a little bit of paper, you go down, you show the boatman that, you get on. That's not really association, according to Bhaktivinoda Thakur. And even going and buying something from someone, you're standing there at the Woolworths or Aldi, and the person takes the money and have a nice day, have a nice day. That's not really association, Bhaktivinoda Thakur explains. That's just the general human activities. But these things, when it comes to accepting prasad, taking prasad, offering prasad, this is a more deeper association. So Lord Chaitanya, he showed, that not only for sannyasis but for all aspiring bhakti yogis, they're very careful about who they associate with, and giving, accepting prasad is a kind of association, is one kind of association. We can see that Lord Chaitanya actually, he wouldn't accept prasadam from people who were implicated in sinful activity, intoxication, illicit sex, gambling or meat eating. But he also wouldn't accept prasadam from people, even if they weren't sinful, but they had an atheistic mentality, and this was the case with the Mayavadis. In his pastimes there's various examples of both of these. So one example, the first one that comes to mind, is when Lord Chaitanya went to Vrindavan, and actually he was in Mathura, and he was dancing in the temple of Keshavaji there. In Mathura there's a temple called Keshavaji. And he was dancing in the temple, and an older Brahmin came and danced with him, and very ecstatically was dancing with him. Was chanting, and they were crying in love of God. All the ecstatic symptoms were there in this Brahmana as well as in Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And after this episode, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu inquired that where he had learned to worship Krishna in such an ecstatic way. And this Brahmana explained that he had the great fortune of taking initiation from Srila Madhavendra Puri. And Lord Chaitanya was very happy to hear that, because of course his spiritual master is the disciple of Madhavendra Puri. So like this, the Brahmana, he invited Lord Chaitanya to his house, and when the Lord came to his house, he instructed Balabhadracharya, the servant of Lord Chaitanya, that here's the kitchen, here's the vegetables, here's the things you can cook for the Lord. And actually this Brahmana, he was called one of the Sanodiya Brahmanas. You might know this story. And the Sanodiya Brahmins, they're actually the Brahmins, although they're Brahmins, but they're the priests to a certain Vaishya community, certain business community. And there's, especially in northern India, there's different classes or different types of Vaishya communities, business people, and some of them live very purely, and then some of them, it's known that they take intoxication and so forth. So the Sanodiya Brahmins are the priests or the advisors to these people who don't follow regularly the principles. You know, they regularly take intoxication and other things like that. So the Brahman, the sannyasis, they won't accept food in their house of that Brahman, even though they're Brahmana. But because they minister, because they're priests of people who don't follow, then naturally some connection becomes. Sometimes Srila Prabhupada would talk about, and in fact Srila Rupa Goswami and Sanatana Goswami would express that to Lord Chaitanya sometimes, that, you know, although we're from a very high Brahmin family, but we've been associating with people who are, you know, not following and doing sinful activities, therefore naturally we become offended. Naturally we become affected. Of course we know they're eternal souls, but this is what they were saying, this principle, explaining this point. So Lord Chaitanya, when he heard the Sanadya Brahman say, you know, obviously you're not going to accept my cooking because I'm the priest of these. Lord Chaitanya said, no, actually that may be the case, but actually because you've accepted Madhavendra Puri, then you know, this has changed everything. You have a very high devotional connection. And he said, whatever, you know, yad yada charati shrestha, whatever a great man does, if Madhavendra Puri does it, then if Madhavendra Puri is taken prasad at your house, then it's good enough for me. But originally we can see that the understanding, before the Lord had even said anything, the understanding was among his servants, was among everyone, that anyone who was involved with, you know, intoxication and meat eating, these kind of karmic sinful activities, Lord Chaitanya wouldn't take prasadam at their place, wouldn't accept prasadam from them. So that's kind of one category of people. And the other category is people who were very strict in their habits. So the Mayavadi sannyasis, they're sannyasis, and they're very good sannyasis, right? They're very strict in their habits, vegetarian, they're very, they study the Vedas, everything else like that. So they don't fall into that category. But still Lord Chaitanya wouldn't take prasad at their place. He wouldn't associate with him, wouldn't accept their food, sit with them. So this is the second category, that although they're, in terms of sinful activities, they're not sinful, but they are actually offenders. And Lord Chaitanya explained this, that Mayavadi Krishna Aparadi, that Mayavadis are offenders because although they might externally follow everything, internally they actually decry the existence of the Lord altogether. Lord Chaitanya was very strong on this point, and actually in his earlier pastimes in Navadvip, one of his followers, Mukunda, would regularly go and hear from people who had this philosophy that yes, we need to be vegetarian, we have to follow strictly everything, but ultimately there is no God, it's all God, everything's one, you can just do. They had this philosophy. He would hear that because they can also be very learned in the Vedas. They're very learned, they know so many things, but their ultimate conclusion is not correct. It's not actually in line with the essence of the Vedas, what Krishna is giving. Vedaisya saveraham eva vedya. So he, sorry, I just lost my train of thought there for a second. So Lord Chaitanya, so Mukunda would like to go and hear from these people, and Lord Chaitanya advised him against it. And at one point, Lord Chaitanya became very strong and said to him, you know, don't come here. He told his other servant, don't let him come here at all. I don't want to talk with him. I don't want to hear from someone who doesn't care to hear this Mayavadi philosophy. That's how strongly he felt about it. And the reason is that although somebody may follow everything nicely, they are vegetarian, they don't, you know, kill animals, they don't do anything like that, they don't take intoxication, but the reason is that such a person actually decries the very existence of God, the very existence of Krishna altogether. And for a devotee, that's you know, it's just like their whole life is serving Krishna, and someone's saying that there's no Krishna. So I thought of an example of this. It's just like if you had a group of sons. So just imagine in the olden times before all this technology and communication, but you had a wealthy man who was a very pious man. He was brought his sons up very nicely, and somehow due to some misfortune, a group of his sons became separated, and they were in a foreign country, they were in another place. And most of the sons were trying to get back to the father, trying to say, where are we? Where is this? Where is our father? How do we get back to him? And the father wanted the sons back. He's missing his loving sons like anything. And then one of the sons wasn't so nice, and he would regularly be violent to the other sons. He would like hit them and just beat them, and he was out of control, and obviously the father didn't appreciate that. But there was another son who actually said to all the others, why are you worrying about this? We have no father. This was his way of dealing with being away from his father. He made a philosophy that we have no father. We have no father. What are you guys talking about? There's no father. There was never any father. Just live life, just enjoy, be here, and don't worry, we have no father. So the father is most unhappy with that son, because he's trying to tell all the other sons, don't even try to come back to me. He's missing all his loving sons. And one of the sons, although one son is violent against the others, of course the father doesn't like that, but the son who's telling all the others that he doesn't even exist, the father doesn't even exist, and don't even try to re-establish that loving relationship, then he's most unhappy with that son. So externally, if you're just looking at it, it looks like, oh, this one's the bad guy, right? The guy who's punching the other one, and he hits him, doesn't it? It looks externally like he's the worst. But really, internally, the guy who's telling everyone, don't even try to get back to your father, we have no father, he's by far the worst, actually, in the eyes of the father. Does it make sense? He's much more, the father's much more unhappy with him. So this is the position of the Mayavadis, people like that. It is actually a direct offense. It's an offense to the Lord. Just like this brings up the question of, the difference between offenses and sins, right? Is naturally comes. So the one who's violent to his brother, that's sinful. He's being sinful. So if people are being violent towards animals, they're killing animals, they're being violent towards people, that's sinful. That's sin. But if someone is directly offending the Supreme Lord and saying to everybody else, don't, there's no God, all this stuff, then that's actually offensive. That's directly offensive, right? In Sanskrit, there's a distinction made, right? Sin is pap. Papa means sin, and an offense is aparad. It's a different thing. So we can also give a simple example of this. A metaphor is that if someone works for a big company, and if they are found that they are taking some money from the till, they're doing something improper, then that's like a sin, right? That's a sin against the company, against the head of the company, right? They're taking their energy and misusing it improperly. They're misusing the energy, right? But if then that employee directly writes, in the newspaper or something, writes a whole thing about the head of the company, blaspheming them, saying they did this, they did that, and all kinds of personal insults and everything, then that's actually more. There's less chance that person will again come in the employ of the company nicely. If someone's doing some sin, taking some money, that may be overlooked and say, yeah, but he's good at his job, we just need to fix that, make sure he doesn't do it again. But if someone directly offends the head of the company, then, there's very little chance that they'll be re-established in that, relationship. So, it's important for devotees, we, as followers of Caitanya Mahaprabhu, we really have to understand what is his feeling. And if we get caught up in the sentiment of the externals, then we may go off the path. We may get diverted by getting caught up in the externals of these different things. When the Lord did, no doubt, take the externals very seriously, He wouldn't accept prasadam at people's house who were externally sinful. Definitely, no doubt. But He also took it very seriously, if not more seriously, what was the philosophy of the people. What was their philosophy? And just one more point on this sin and offense. Another way of understanding this is in the last of the seed slokas of Srimad Bhagavatam. It's described there that one has to search for Krishna directly and indirectly. And Prabhupada also talks about this idea of indirectly and directly and indirectly in the purport to Srimad Bhagavatam 1.3.38. Now let me just read Srimad Bhagavatam 2.9.36. This is the last of the seed slokas. A person who is searching after the supreme absolute truth, the personality of Godhead, must certainly search for it up to this in all circumstances, in all space and time, and both directly and indirectly. Srimad Bhagavatam 2.9.36. Prabhupada also talks about direct and indirect in Srimad Bhagavatam 1.3.38 in the purport. Everyone within the creation of the Lord is rendering service to the Lord indirectly or directly. No one is an exception to this law of the Lord. Those who are rendering service indirectly, being forced by the illusory agent of the Lord, are rendering service unto Him unfavourably. But those who are rendering service unto Him directly, under the direction of His beloved agent, are rendering service unto Him favourably. Srila Prabhupada writes in the purport to the 2.9.36, the last sloka, that the indirect service or searching for the Lord indirectly means to follow human society, the Varnashram, actual human society, to follow Varnashram Dharma, to be a part of the universal body of the Lord, to do your, even though you may not directly be saying, I am directly worshipping the Supreme Lord, but if you're doing your duty as a Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra, that is, you're a part of that universal form of the Lord. But because that universal form is on the level of Brahman and Paramatma, it's not direct. See, and the direct is the Bhagavan. On the level of the personality of Godhead, that's direct. But the indirect is acting in that way properly within Varnashram. Prabhupada says in the purport to that 2.9.36. And he also uses the same word indirectly as someone who's is not even following that, but they're doing it unfavorably. So anybody living in the world, if they want to, make money, they have to find something, take it somewhere else and sell it for more than they bought it for. A simple example. So that's business. That's set up by the Lord. All the activities, all the energies of the Lord are working a certain way, and you have to surrender to that. You have to serve that if you want success. So that's indirect. So coming back to the sin and aparad, we can understand that sin is when you're indirectly performing some crime, right? You're performing a crime with Krishna's energies, in other words, right? So everybody's serving indirectly, it's all working under the energies of the Lord, and if you do something wrong, you commit violence to someone or something like that, you're working within the indirect, and that's called a sin, right? But if you're working in the direct, you're dealing directly with the Lord, Bhagavan himself, then that's now becomes aparad. And for devotees, sin can become aparad, as we know in the 10 offences, when one keeps performing sin and says, oh no, but that's okay, I'll keep doing this, but I'll chant and that'll be neutralized. So even though that's actually a sin, it's within the energy, but that actually becomes aparad, because that now that you're actually connecting it to the Lord. You've connected yourself to the Lord, said, yeah, I'll follow this, I'm chanting your holy name directly, but then I'm doing this other thing that's trying to exploit your energy while I'm trying to worship you, and that becomes a personal offense. So this is just another way, of looking at that. If we look at direct Bhagavan, the personality of Godhead, indirect is his energies, his expansions, and how we deal, they're all connected. I had a couple more points here. I don't have time. I wanted to read this a whole section of purport actually that Srila Prabhupada talks about this idea. That the Mayavadis were vegetarian, but Lord Chaitanya, he didn't accept to eat with them. Prabhupada writes in a letter to one devotee who's really promoting vegetarianism, and saying we want to go and there's two. One is that, and the other one is somebody wants to write about animal slaughter, wants to put a big picture about animal slaughter in the BTG and shock people into that. And this is sort of what sometimes you see on the internet, on social media. You see some people presenting really ghastly images of things and saying, oh, this will progress the world, I thought that was relevant to this verse and to Lord Chaitanya's, how he's demonstrating that the philosophy, what people understand, is just as important as the external sin. Prabhupada says here, please do not print any picture showing how a cow is being murdered in our BTG. This will pollute the whole atmosphere. We are not meant for moving anyone's sentiment against animal slaughter. We are neither Buddhists or Jains, whose main propaganda is against animal slaughter. Even the so-called vegetarians who do not take Krishna Prasad are as much sinful as the non-vegetarians. Our propaganda is different, to make people Krishna conscious, which automatically makes them sympathetic against any kind of animal slaughter. According to Srimad Bhagavatam, one living entity subsists on the life of other living entities, either vegetarian or non-vegetarian, but we are neither of them. We are not vegetarian and we are non-vegetarian. We are transcendental. We are concerned with Krishna Prasadam. Try to popularize Krishna Prasadam as you've already done. People will naturally become vegetarian without any ghastly propaganda. Other pictures, there's so many subject matters, just like we follow 4 principles, say for example illicit sex life. We can publish so many pictures of illicit sex life, but that will not advance our cause. Similarly, we may make propaganda against animal slaughter, but that would not advance our real cause. Krishna consciousness is based on pure understanding, not by any sentimental provocation. People must be intelligent enough to catch up this Krishna consciousness movement without being carried away by any sentimental wave. I just want to share that. I thought that was relevant to this idea of trying to understand Lord Chaitanya's mood, trying to understand the Lord's mood, how yes, he is very much obviously against animal slaughter, he's against all these things, but just as important is what is the consciousness of the people. And as devotees, we can take his example and we can actually nicely present our philosophy, and people are very much into vegetarianism or some form of vegetarianism. If you actually bring it, in my humble experience, with a little bit, if you immediately establish a philosophy, something like, yeah, that's good, but we actually believe in a soul. So we believe in an eternal soul, and that eternal soul is living in all bodies, and all bodies should have a chance to worship the Lord. They worship the Lord in different ways, and it's our duty to help that. And, there's not much time left, but this can circumvent a lot of sort of confusion in this matter, and people can actually appreciate it very much. And in the same way, Lord Chaitanya, he established the philosophy that there is a Supreme Lord to the Mayavadis, And if we are dealing with people who are very much attached to vegetarianism or some version of vegetarianism, that's really the most important thing. We can establish our philosophy in a nice way. Many times they'll actually accept it. Recently I had an experience where I was talking to two, I'll finish with this little story. I was talking to two people, husband and wife, or boyfriend, girlfriend, I don't know, but they were partner, man and woman, and they presented that, the main thing was that we should not deal with, cows in any way or anything like that. And I simply said that, well, we believe in a soul, and there's also a soul in those cows, and we do two things according to our founder Acharya. We establish farming communities, like all the devotees here are working so hard to establish cow protection. That was given, and to show how cows can actually be cared for, and it can actually work, and are a hugely valuable part of human society. On one hand, we do that. On the other hand, following our founder Acharya, we also accept that milk that has been produced by cows who are not within our care, and we offer that to Krishna, because that gives them a chance to be elevated. This is our founder Acharya gave us these two things, two ways that we should deal with this. And I simply said that if we don't accept that milk and offer it to Krishna, what's going to happen to those cows? They have no means of elevation. That is their means. They don't chant Hare Krishna. Their means, their indirect service, if you want to say, as part of the whole human society, is giving their milk. We take their milk, we offer it. And I said, if we don't do that, then what's going to happen to them? They're just going to keep coming back as cows. They won't get elevated. What about them? And I was very surprised that after I said that, the man started to say something sort of against it, and the woman cut him off and said, yeah, but what about those cows? How are we going to help them? And I just sat back and thought, wow, it's such a simple point, but if we don't present that, then people feel like, vegetarian or some version of vegetarianism is superior to Krishna consciousness. And if we take on that and say, yes, this is the most important thing, then we miss the whole mood of Lord Chaitanya, where he's not saying that's so important. He didn't accept the Mayavadis association, even though they're all vegetarian, they're all everything else. But if we just present their philosophy like that, in my humble experience, that many times the people will get some benefit. Anyway, that's the point. And Prabhupada's saying, and just to finish on this very nice letter that Srila Prabhupada wrote, he says, try to popularize Krishna Prasad as you have already done. People will naturally become vegetarian without any ghastly propaganda. And I'm sorry, this is the previous letter. I just want to finish with this point. Prabhupada says, you should try to convince your friends in that way about Krishna consciousness as the most important business. They should try to learn about Krishna consciousness. But because they are vegetarians, there's great possibility for them to understand this philosophy. So although we don't accept their philosophy, and we don't go along with, this is the most important thing in life, we don't get caught up in a sentimental wave, as Prabhupada described it, a sentimental wave. We don't get caught up in that. But at the same time, we understand that if people are interested in vegetarianism or some version of vegetarianism, they are very, what Prabhupada says, there's a great possibility for them to understand this philosophy. Because as Srimad Bhagavatam says, only the animal killer or the killer of their own soul, someone who doesn't care about their own future, or someone who's violent to others, only they cannot understand Srimad Bhagavatam. So simply by them giving up animal slaughter, they become very able to understand. And it's very, it's our duty actually as devotees, it's our duty to give them that opportunity, to explain this philosophy to them in a very nice way that they can digest, Okay. Anyway, thank you very much. I hope I'm not, I don't want to say that I know more than anybody else or I have any more understanding in that way. I'm just trying to share a couple of things that I've experienced. And so anyway. Is there any question or comments from the senior devotees about these points? Or corrections? Krishna?
about how you view yourself, you're on the restaurant and so on, the shower. And it just took me back to India. And I remember going to Udupi Temple, I went to India.
Unfortunately.
And it's something like 6,000 people a day, 7,000 people a day they serve. And it's non-stop, you know, with one session after another. So if you miss one session, and a lot of the culture in these temples would be Tirupati, Tirupati, that's also massive, 25,000-30,000 people a day.
Yeah.
So a lot of the culture around these places is based on prasad. You know, it's like the main activity.
Yeah.
Apart from taking darshan of the Lord. And usually the darshan of the Lord is very limited. It's only maybe 30 seconds if you like.
Yeah.
Before you get back, you know, and move on. And so it's you see a lot of these places the culture is based on prasad. And thanks to Prabhupada, we also have this culture now here in our country. And thanks to itself, we have, you know, the restaurants and cafes. So it gives people who are not connected to the philosophy of Bhakti Yoga a chance to connect. You know? And my experience.
You see that I see that every day. It's incredible. Yeah. People just sitting waiting for their food, reading Prabhupada's books. Sometimes I go to take their food and they're reading book. Maybe I'll wait a few more minutes because I give them the prasad and then they put the book down. So maybe I should have waited a bit longer. Anyway, it's miraculous how people's hearts change. Yeah.
So. And it's the point that, like you said, to read the books. So it's good for us to be conscious of the fact that there's people coming for the first time, and it's good to have some literature there, Prabhupada's books, small books.
Yeah, the small books especially, yeah.
So that's one point, and that's about it. I just want to mention
how important prasadam is to.
Never be under
Isn't it so many devotees? You know, they say, "How did you come to Krishna consciousness?" They say, "Oh, I took prasadam." I know. I mean, we all have our stories, I'm sure, but in my case, I was, out of university. I wanted to take very seriously, doing music full time. That was kind of part of my life, and so I sort of had a situation where I didn't really have much money after playing for the rehearsal room and so many things like that. And one of the other people there said, "Oh, you can go and eat for free every lunchtime at Food for Life. It's just down the road here." Oh, really? Okay. So I probably went every day for a year, I guess, and took prasadam. So I'm sure we all have our experience. And then when I joined, I went to this incredible restaurant called the Piggery. Was that what the restaurant was called?
No, it's called
Supernatural Foods at the Piggery at Byron. And we were brahmacharis at that time, and we went, and Krishna Caritamrita and his good wife, Malini Manachi. I'll never forget, after just eating khichdi every day on the roads of brahmachari, that's like this big menu. I said, "Have whatever you want." So I remember getting a monk's platter, and it was like tofu, fried tofu, and when you're brahmachari, it was pretty simple. And I remember just thinking, wow, how I was so touched, by your and your wife's service, of service to the devotees even back then. And even after joining that, the exchange of love, I felt that love, when the prasadam was given, I felt that love tangibly, and so prasadam is so important, I think, isn't it? Maybe 2/3 of Lord Chaitanya's pastimes, so much is about taking
Swami was speaking to Shivaram. Shivaram just mentioned it, finished reading the Caitanya Caritamrita in sort of 17th time or something.
Wow.
And Maharaj said to him, "Tell me what you're getting out of it." I do a lot of eating. I do a lot of eating.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, anything else? So, yeah, quickly, yeah. I mean, it's Sunday, so.
I just wanted to comment on I like your examples. The first example of how Karma Yoga is like an instruction book, and Jnana Yoga is just by getting out of the maze. It was very just easy to understand when you explained it like that. And the second example was the two brothers. One of them is peaceful, but he's aggressive. Or one of them is peaceful, but he's saying that there's no father, and the other one's aggressive, but he still is faithful to the father, or whatever you would call it. And that was a really good example, actually, explaining why it's so offensive to reject the Lord, and how I later realized how, if we actually, Krishna is the one who's helping us getting rid of our sins. So if we reject the person who's helping us getting rid of our sins, how can we can't become sinless, even though we stop, eating meat, which is full of sin, but we still commit all kinds of other sins. There's no way to get out of it. It was a very nice example that you gave me. Thank you.
Thank you for the encouragement. Okay. Jai Shri Caitanya Caritamrita ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Thank you for coming. Hari Bol.